The Sawyer Mini is the most versatile personal filtration system available. It's a perfect solution for backpacking, hiking, hunting, fishing, scouting, international travel, and emergency preparedness. At a mere 2 ounces, the Mini fits in the palm of your hand and can filter up to 100,000 gallons of water from any freshwater lake, river, or stream. The Sawyer Mini has a 0.1 micron absolute pore size. It was tested to 10 million parts of bacteria and 1 million parts of protozoa without a single breakthrough. This is the highest level filters can be tested to, so we're confident these are the highest rates of filtration available.
And we're back. And I've got my co-host John Wheaton with me tonight, a good friend Sal DeGennaro directly below John, and beside him, some degenerate who's into some sort of strange, deviant sexual stuff. Just at the
pup play. I didn't know the Marines were into pup play.
And of course, we're joking. That's our in-house intel subject matter expert, S2. So here we are, 4 nights in a row, discussing drones, and we're slowly getting a little bit better picture as time goes on. So I mentioned last night that I was planning on putting a diagram of some sort together, and that didn't quite happen as a diagram. It happened more of a list like this. But what I want to start with is, what do we know for sure about the drones? Well, we know that the federal government is cloaking this in extreme secrecy, and that they're not sharing the information with other levels of government, let alone the public. We know that the federal government is saying that the drones pose no danger, but kind of hard to say that if you don't know what they are. So I'm pretty sure they know exactly what they are. And that's further confirmed in my mind because they're unwilling to shoot them down. If they thought they were an actual threat, we would not have drones flying over restricted airspace completely unfettered. So also in addition to that is that if these drones were meant to be, stealthy or anything like that, they'd be flying at a much higher altitude. They wouldn't have lights, and they certainly wouldn't have audible gas engines on them, which is the case. So those are the things we know as far as the government in general is concerned. But what else do we know that's maybe in addition to this information on the drones? Well, we've had intel for many, many years that Russia, Iran, and North Korea have expressed intentions to bring weapons of mass destruction into America and then give them to somebody, perhaps a proxy agent, like you suggested, John, for somebody to use against the American public. So that includes nuclear material for dirty bombs, but it also includes nuclear warheads. And something not too many people are discussing so far is there were 80 nuclear warheads that went missing in Ukraine approximately 10 years ago, and nobody knows where they are to this day. So if we take all that into consideration and looking at what's happened over the past 4 years at the southern border, it's a complete, gong show. It's been wide open to terrorists and enemy states and anything they essentially want to bring here. The 9 man pads that came into the country, so shoulder mounted, surface to air heat seeking munitions, came across the border, no problem, a couple months ago. So if we take all of that into account, how do we square this? How do we say, okay, what's probable and what's not probable? I mean, things like space aliens is not probable in this discussion, but it's not a stretch to conclude that the drones are ours. I mean, it's the only way to explain the secrecy, the repeated claims that they don't pose a threat, and the lack of interdiction on the federal government's part or the military's part's concern. So if we try to explain that with the federal government's behavior, we've got a handful of options. Either they're extremely inept, similar to how they handled the Chinese balloons, or they know what's going on and are trying to prevent mass hysteria, or they're planning a false flag event to undermine Trump, such as leaving a big mess for the next admin to make them look bad, much like they did with the that pandemic stuff, or even going so far as declaring martial law and not transferring power to the new administration. Or the final option is they're hunting for something. And what might that be? Dirty bombs, nuclear warheads, other weapons of mass destruction? Here's the thing, is that whether it's a dirty bomb or a nuclear warhead, and I'm going to get into both of them in a second before we open it up to the panel discussing it, they both emit gamma radiation. So there are multiple experts in the drone industry who have built drones for the military that fit the description of what people are saying, especially over the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, that are specifically for scanning for stuff on the ground, including stuff giving off the signature of gamma radiation. So everybody in the panel has their own opinions. My opinion is it's the latter one, that they know for a fact that some bad stuff has been brought across the border. And somebody said in a thread on X, why would the Democrats let this happen in, Democrat states? And it's not really their choice, to be quite frank. New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, heavily populated areas, you could have a really big impact there. Hence the reason they kept going after the World Trade Center, both in the 90s as well as 2001. Regardless of what your theory is on that, it still left a big scar because they hit a big city in America. So I may or may not bring this particular page back up again, but this one here I will be bringing up. So this is a summary of the first one. So if we take government extreme secrecy, federal government, no interdiction, restricted airspace, known terrorists, federal government saying there's no threat, wide open border, and weapons of mass destruction intel that we've had for years. Again, it points to ineptitude, trying to prevent hysteria or a false flag, or we've got weapons of mass destruction in the country and they plan to use them. So I've got two more quick tabs to share, and then I'm going to go to you, John, for your thoughts on this, and then I'll go Sal and S2 in that order. So this one here, Nuclear Regulatory Commission fact sheet on dirty bombs. So a dirty bomb is essentially what's called an RDD, a radiological dispersal device. So that combines a conventional explosive, let's say TNT, dynamite, with radioactive material, typically the same type of material you'd see from nuclear power plants, for example. And the idea is that, you have a suitcase, let's say, and it's full of this radioactive material, and you've got TNT mixed in it as well. If under perfect conditions, let's say that you let it off on the top of a building, you might contaminate an area around 2 or 3, miles as far as your circumference is concerned. Chances are that not many people would die from the exposure to radiation, and chances are that only the people who would die immediately would essentially be right at ground zero. So these RDDs, dirty bombs, whatever you want to call them, not super effective for putting a major hurt on somebody like us. But we're back to Sun Tzu. You kill one, you terrorize 1,000. Now imagine that there's a bunch of these go off simultaneously, and most people don't know the distinction between a dirty bomb and a warhead, nuclear fission. There's another article here, which, by the way, the brief again tonight is a couple dozen pages long, plus there's some supplementary stuff that I'm going to bring up. It's on patreon.com/survival dispatch, but with the amount of time it takes to put into these longer episodes, they're only available to our paying members. It's $9.99 a month. So Wikipedia has an article as well on RDDs, radiological dispersal devices. It's very similar information to the first one that I read off, so I'm not going to go through it again, but I will drop a point to this sentence right here. Dirty bombs radiation can be dispersed only within a few hundred meters or a few miles of the explosion. So that's what I'm saying. If they had it at the right elevation and didn't have other tall buildings in the way, they might get, several square miles, or at least a circumference of several miles, that they would be able to contaminate. And sorry, I forgot to pull up this tab like that. My apologies. We've got so many tabs open, it's hard to keep track of. So John, I'm going to turn it over to you for your thoughts on that information that I've covered so far.
Well, I think I texted you earlier, heard a quote today. I was listening to a podcast while I was driving with the kids, and one point that was brought up is if the government isn't investigating it, then they probably either know exactly what's going on or they're involved in it. Yeah. Currently, the government's not showing a whole lot of worry about it. We're not locking down things. They're not shooting these things down to figure out what they are. There's ways to shoot these down without damage. And we've covered that in the last couple of days. There's ways to get these down if you are really wanting to investigate them. They're not. So they know exactly what's going on, in my opinion. And whether that is a dirty bomb or some sort of military action, activity, training exercise, they know exactly what's going on, in my opinion. At this point, I tend to think that, especially when you talk about the close proximity to like places like Washington, D.C., New Jersey is not right next door, but it's not that far. You can get a drone to fly over that, and that's fairly easy. But I don't think that this is anything other than some sort of nefarious thing. I'm starting to lean more towards the nefarious, that they're covering something big up. The more and more that I hear out of this, I'm not 100% on that, but I feel that is what is going on. They're trying to cover their ass.
You and I have looked at this from every angle imaginable, and there's only so many explanations that squares everything. Okay.
Yep.
So here's an example. So Kanzi, very difficult to catch because these drones are flying lower than the radar range, and they can fly pre-programmed without lights on at nighttime. That's the whole point, Kanzi. They're flying with their lights on.
Yep. When
they fly at low altitude, they're gasoline engines. You can hear them a country mile away. They are not trying to disguise their presence whatsoever. And that's the point we're trying to make, is that if these drones had some nefarious purpose, they would be like ISRs and predators. They'd be at 10,000 feet. We have tons of those drones at our disposal. You wouldn't be able to see them. You wouldn't be able to hear them. And we would have none of this, call it excitement over drones flying over these areas. So again, I'm just going to bring it up. Well, actually, I'm going to let Sal go first, then I'll bring it back up again. There's only so many ways that we can square all of the above. That's all there is to it. And, you can explain one or two things with maybe one option or another, but when you ignore the rest of it, then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, Sal, I'm going to pull the slide up while you weigh in on what we've covered so far. But again, if you square all of these things on the left side of this chart, I can't think of anything else other than these four options over here that will actually square the existence of all these things. Sal?
They might be going for a 2-4, right? So it is definitely our government doing this, because the idea that they would not be able to tell who is behind this is preposterous. If you look at incidents in the past few years with drones encroaching on, forbidden airspace, like within half an hour, the bad actor had the FBI at their door. So the idea that they don't know who it is absolutely ridiculous. So I'm still convinced the biggest push behind this is so that they can do exactly as Charles Schumer, the ever-present Chucky from New York, was talking about just a few hours ago. He's spearheading legislation to ram through Congress to put more restrictions on drones, right? Drones are now an integral part of modern warfare, just like the deep state and the Democrats want to take your AR-15s, they're going to want to take your drones. So if there is a dirty bomb issue going on, again, it might be a twofer. Maybe they are then conspicuously searching it out, but also causing all the drone panic so they can pass their legislation.
I can't disagree with that, Sal. That's a logical conclusion. S2, you've got a lot of knowledge and experience with drones. Give us your high level thoughts here.
So for starters, these drones might be able to fly autonomously. However, in order to be able to do that, they have to have a GPS unit on board. That GPS unit can be triangulated so you can find its location and you can see where it goes back to, without a doubt. The minimum amount of satellites they have to be locked onto is 5. So you've got one of two things going on here. You have somebody on the other end that's manning these things, or they're setting up to run patterns. And a lot of the stuff that I've seen here recently is that these things are flying autonomously. They're running really weird patterns that are set up specifically to run a very specific pattern, and they run this pattern over and over and over again. For them to be looking for something, I don't know that I'm ready to go down that rabbit hole yet. I'm kind of with Sal on this. I think this whole DJI thing's been going on since 2017, I think. And for what reason, I don't know, other than these drones do pose a threat to aerospace traffic in and around airports. You can take one of these bigger drones, like the big agricultural ones. You could fly these right at a jet's engine and take a jet's engine out. That's one reason. Then when they implemented RFID mandatory on drones for commercial drones, now they're starting to do it more on hobbyist drones, to where you now have to have a license to fly a drone over a certain weight. I don't see what I see going on from my bird's eye view is I see a lot of hysteria being created. I see 80% of the images that I've seen are commercial manned aircraft, helicopters, airplanes, and things of that like. I have yet to see, I think I saw one drone that looked like one that Terradynamics was working on, and they were actually one of the companies that was one of the bidders on the DARPA ancillary program. And that's basically where they have drones that they can fly without infrastructure. That's the only one that I've seen that even comes close to it. Now, I will say a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned this on the cast or in the notes, that they did have sniffer helicopters up over DC a couple of weeks ago. And we do know that we have some nefarious actors in this country. There's Al Qaeda here. There's over 1,000 members of Al Qaeda who have infiltrated our borders here. And we know that there's going to see, it's almost certain that they're planning to do something here. What that is, I don't know. But I don't think this drone operation has anything to do with that.
Well, before we go any further, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion, I disagree with both you and Sal for a really big reason. Every time these guys are trying to pass something like banning drones, all of their minions sing from the same sheet of paper, and we see the Mockingbird media and all levels of Democrats and the bureaucracy all saying the same thing. We've got to ban these drones. I don't see that happening at all, and it doesn't fit their regular modus operandi as far as I'm concerned. John, go ahead.
So you popped up that comment from HTG about them getting out of Washington. Big things in the news this week we haven't covered because we've been focused so much on this drone stuff. The Democrats are talking about boycotting whole cloth the inauguration.
Correct.
What does that set up? If you really wanted to pull off one of these things, what's the cover you could run? Well, we hate the orange man and we're not going to sit by his inauguration. So then what happens? Half the government gets blown up in one fell swoop.
I mean, that's entirely possible as well.
I'm not trying to get too tinfoily, but man, like, yeah, perfect cover.
By all means, break out the tinfoil. So this post here, there's been a lot for at least a decade concern among U.S. officials that North Korea could break apart a nuclear weapon, smuggle the parts into our country, and reassemble it in the location of its choice. The suggestion that the federal government is looking for a nuke is plausible. And there's multiple people who are subject matter experts weighing in on this. Again, we can't say with 100% veracity, but if it walks like a duck and it smells like a duck, it's probably a duck. So this video here is really telling. It's 8 minutes long. I hate like heck to play a video that long. So John, Sal, or S2, I'm going to play this video, but if you want me to pause it at a particular point, just give me a holler and I'll do that. And there's a reason I want to play this entire video. This guy is an absolute subject matter expert, number one. Number two, he's got a lot of really telling stuff to say in this. So here we go.
But I'm a manufacturer of unmanned aircraft, military grade unmanned aircraft, as you can see one of my systems here. There's all of these mysterious drones going on off the East Coast. And as a professional, as a subject matter expert, I wanted to give you all my opinion on what I think could be going on with these drones. I don't particularly believe that these have a nefarious intent. I could be wrong, but I want to give you the truth and what I believe. It's my own opinion, and I've not bounced this off of anybody. So, if you think it's bullshit, whatever, that's cool. You know, I don't want to spread misinformation, as we know that there's a lot of that going around. But anyway, back in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan had dismantled the nuclear program, and there were, with Russia, there were countless nuclear missiles that were disarmed and disposed of. Well, there were over 80, I believe. There were over 80 nuclear warheads that were in Ukraine that came up missing. Okay. Uh, we don't know where they are. Maybe somebody does, but nobody really knows where these are. And I speak with some pretty high level government officials on this stuff, and it seems as though that is the case. So I spoke to a gentleman a few months ago who was trying to raise an alarm to the highest levels of our government, which they had their ears closed, about this one particular nuclear warhead that he physically put his hands on. He physically touched this warhead that was left over from Ukraine. And he knew that that thing was headed towards the United States. Okay. That is a very serious deal. And everyone knows that the United States government, this administration, is pushing to get into a war with Russia. We all know that. We all feel it. We all see it. Okay. Well, back up a few years. Do y'all remember when those drones were mysteriously flying across the Interstate 70 corridor from Colorado up into Nebraska, down here into Kansas, and out into Missouri? Well, it was believed that those drones were looking for radioactive material because there had been some material that come up missing here in the United States, and they felt like it was high probability that the nuclear or the radioactive material would be taken along the Interstate 70 corridor, heading east or west or south. So, from what we understand, they were out there trying to find this radioactive material. Now, drones, they have no reason to be in the air at night unless you're doing some type of ISR work, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, looking for bad guys, or looking for a victim, a search and rescue victim, or law enforcement, or some type of military project, right? There's no reason for a drone to be flying at night, really, okay? Because they don't see shit. So, unless you have thermal optics, drones really don't see stuff. You need to do mapping during the day. If you're going to do farming stuff, you mostly do it during the day. The only reason why you would ever fly an unmanned aircraft at night, is if you're looking for something, whether it be a person or trying to smell gas. We have methane gas detection systems that can detect gas leaks in pipelines. You really wouldn't use thermal optics for trying to find gas leaks, just simply because the only way you're actually going to find a gas leak with thermal optics is if the gas leak is aggressive enough that it has a difference in temperature. Because radio thermal imaging, it creates a digital image based off of the temperature variance. So whatever is different in temperature, it creates an image. Usually gas leaks so slow that it goes quickly into ambient, before you can even see it. So we have special sensors that can detect gas leaks. We also have special sensors that can detect radioactive material. So with this gentleman that I had spoken with, who was trying to raise the alarm to try to get somebody in the government to say, hey, we need to work together to go try to find this nuclear warhead, none of that ever happened. They knew that warhead was on its way to the United States. That's all that ever came of it. Nothing ever happened. This government did not do anything at all to help this gentleman raise the alarm and raise awareness that there is a very deadly weapon on its way to the United States. It's out there. Nobody knows where it's at now. It left Europe. Now it's gone. So my guess, my own guess, is that these drones are not nefarious in intent. If they are, they are, but I doubt it. But if they are drones, the only reason why they would be flying and flying that low is because they're trying to smell something on the ground. That's it. There's no other reason for a drone to be flying in the air other than to piss a bunch of people off at night. That's it. So my belief is they're trying to smell something on the ground, gas leaks, radioactive material, whatever. So, and do I think that that they're coming up out of the ocean? No, I don't think so. Drones that are multi-copter type drones, not the the fixed wing aircraft that look like regular airplanes, but the multi-copters, they only have so much battery life. They have hybrid versions that are gas powered with electric, but those can still only fly for a short period of time. There's no way in hell that any drone is going to go miles off the coast as a multi-copter and fly into the interior of the United States and do a bunch of work and then turn around and fly back. It's just physics will not allow that to happen.
So I've got a piece of breaking news. It was released 40 minutes ago, actually 43 minutes ago. And this is on the Next News Network that corroborates what that gentleman was saying. Breaking intel from a verified high-level source with top secret special access clearances just dropped bombshell info to us on the mysterious drones being seen across the U.S. These are our drones tracking gamma rays linked to possible WMDs in a massive counter-terror operation. The Office of Global Access, OGA, a shadowy three-letter agency, has deployed advanced surveillance assets to hunt for a stray nuke or mass casualty weapon hidden on the east and west coast. Keep in mind what we've been saying for a while, that the next terrorist attacks on the homeland will be multiple locations across the country hit simultaneously and most likely multiple days in a row as well. So mission objectives: detect communications tied to the device, just like S2 mentioned. Number 2, partner with law enforcement for rapid response. Number 3, prevent mass panic while advancing intel operations. Assets in play: low altitude surveillance aircraft scanning for signals, spec ops units ready for instant action, cyber intel teams analyzing terror networks. Sources say this could involve a submarine breach of our SOSUS warning nets or a WMD hidden in a cargo container or vehicle. The stakes are high and the government's silence speaks volumes. They fear public panic. OGA's advanced ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance tactics, including low and slow aerial monitoring, are actively in play. My source warns this intel is leaking now. Dirty bomb or worse could already be here. Stay alert. This is an active operation with civilian safety on the line. Why is this being kept from us? What is really happening on our coast? More to come as we uncover the truth. Stay with me. All right. So based on that very current piece of information, John, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there is a stark reality that all of these theories that we have pushed out about dirty bombs or some sort of mass casualty weapon are true. If they are, then we're in a world of hurt. Like, it's a serious, serious thing, because you're talking now, dirty bomb, as Chris said, is not going to cause mass casualties necessarily, except for in the blast radius, radiation. If you're outside of a certain perimeter, it's not going to be that dangerous as far as that goes. But that's not the tactic, I don't think. I think the tactic is to create. International terrorists have started using the term horrorism rather than terrorism. That's what the October 7th attack was. how do you do that in a country? I mean, when you talk about Israel, it's a very small country. It's like the size of some of our smaller states. So it's a very small country. How do you do that on a large scale in a country the size of the U.S., we're the third largest nation in the world? You'd have to do something big to do that level of to put that level of mass panic and horror in the eyeballs and the minds of everybody in this country. So, in my opinion, if we were talking about a multifaceted, multi-day attack of terrorism, horrorism, whatever you want to call it, this is one of the major points of it, or one of the major cogs in the wheel. I think that the lower level local stuff is already in place. This is the big bang. Honestly, I think this is the big bang, and all of the other lower level stuff is already in place. Those people are already in their country and have been for months, if not years.
Well, we have credible intel dating back to the 90s that's been confirmed by Admiral Robert Harward, Don Mann, Jeff Nicholas, all kinds of military guys, that there were hundreds of Hezbollah terror cells in America in the 1990s. That number now is in the thousands. Each of those cells could include 5, might be 100 individuals in each one of those cells that are just waiting for instructions. But I mean, what we're trying to do is the same thing as everybody else, and through process of elimination and stitching together pieces of information, trying to get somewhat of a clearer picture, which is why I put together those 2 infographics. But here's a piece of information from earlier today that jives quite well with that gentleman's theory, plus the information that Next News Network just got. Radiation spikes in New York and New Jersey metro detected amid mysterious drone sightings. Authorities are urged to investigate the source of these elevated readings and assess potential risks to the population in these areas. So I don't know how accurate they are, and I don't know if Sal or S2 know, but I'm going to ask you guys a question here. You can buy radiation detection meters off of Amazon. You can also buy cards that are static that will change color if they're exposed to any type of radiation, gamma radiation in particular, which is the signature that they're really looking for dirty bombs and nuclear warheads. Do you think that they work? Do you know anything about them, Sal? Or
I know nothing. I know nothing about that. I'll defer to S2 or whoever knows anything about that.
I can say that the ones you're going to get off of Amazon are probably garbage.
Okay.
At least I actually went through one of these classes last year talking about Geiger counters and the radiation stuff and everything. And the guy was an expert. He ran one of the nuclear power plants, and he was also involved with remediation and things of that nature. And he pretty much told us that anything you buy off of Amazon is going to be garbage. Those cards, those are garbage. Unless you've got military grade equipment, it is available in the civilian circles, obviously, because there are private remediation companies. But for the most part, anything you're going to find, you might find something on eBay that's legit. But there's other pieces of that too, like the batteries and things like that. I wish Mike was here. He would be able to pretty much corroborate what I'm saying.
So I have a vague recollection, actually, that we were on this topic very briefly, Mike and I, last year, and there was somebody that he knows in Alabama, of course, a lot of military contractors there, and they had a meter, and I can't remember what the dollar value was on it, but it was pretty extreme. It wasn't $100, cheapo off of Amazon. And this is the cards that I mentioned here. They're supposedly good for 2 years, or 10 if you keep them in a freezer, but supposedly they change color if you're being exposed to radiation. But I heard to say maybe somebody in our audience, former military in our audience, might be able to chime in on that. So
that was the very card that I was told was garbage, by the way.
Right on. Good to know. Save everybody $22 from buying them. So this one here, this is in reference to the same guy that we just listened to. But this girl's comment is, everyone is saying get out of the cities, but how far can a dirty bomb travel if detonated? My place is home base, but it can't be if I have to travel more than 90 miles, or it travels more than 90 miles. So again, there's a lot of confusion from people who are not experts. Not that I'm saying I'm an expert either, but I do know the difference between a dirty bomb and a warhead. if dirty bombs go off, it's really what John just said. It's all about terrorizing people. It's kill one, terrorize 1,000, as Sun Tzu used to say, especially if you do it in multiple locations across the country. People will hear that a nuclear dirty bomb went off and all hell will break loose after that. If you think things got bad with the TSA after 9/11, just imagine what would happen if the public felt that nuclear bombs, whether they're dirty bombs or not, were going off here in America. The good news is if it's dirty bombs, unless you're very close proximity, you're not going to be hurt other than the fear part. But here's an interesting map, and this has been fairly widely distributed over the past week. But these are the locations of things of some importance. And I don't know if we've covered it very much. I think we briefly mentioned it, that there were a number of these drones taking a very close look at Trump's Bedminster Club. And clearly that would be a high value target. You know, if the Iranians are involved in this, which again, Hezbollah is essentially a branch of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, they would love nothing more than exact revenge for the murder of Soleimani, pardon me, by, you know, killing Trump or killing any members of Trump's family. But we've got quite a combination here in the tri-state area. We've got military assets. We've got Donald Trump's location. We've got an extremely large number of people. So even if a dirty bomb can only affect a few miles, imagine that going off in Manhattan. You know, it would have a much bigger effect than it would, let's say, in Georgia on the coast. Not that we want to see it anywhere at all. Yes, sir.
Question I have is, if these drones are being used to detect radiation, then why are they having to do this only at night? Why are these drones only flying at night? They have sensors now that they can do this by day. They don't have to use thermal to do it. They have Teledyne FLIR Defense back in 2022 launched a new radiation detection sensor called the Move R430. They don't need thermal to detect radiation signatures. So that's a big red flag for me. Why are you doing this only at night?
Well, if I had to guess, and I've heard several people answer this, and I'm going to have to go look up their answers, but first and foremost would be a reduced ability to identify them would be my first gut reaction. But clearly there's a reason why they're running them at night. And like the other guy said, typically the only reason for that would be looking for something. But again, we're at this point, we're all trying to stitch together what information we have. And that's a good question, S2, because if we put up a list of all the things that we know, and then somebody makes a suggestion for something, but it doesn't square with what we already know, we can kind of check that off the list, right? And move on to the next thing. And that's what we've been trying to do ever since this stuff started breaking. So I'm going to play another short video here. This was drones being reported over the U.S. Capitol. This is bullshit. These are not drones. This is exactly what S2 opened the episode with. This is just regular aircraft traffic.
It's not playing, Chris.
Oh, hold on a second here. Thanks for mentioning that. Technical issue here. My apologies. I think I hit the wrong button. Give me just a second here to pull this back up. Golly. This is what happens when you make me the producer and the host. Now you can see it. That was actually, that's not the one. This is the one here. All right. So I'll play this from the beginning. I'm not going to play it for long.
They're not moving.
Yeah, apologies for that.
They're hovering.
So this guy and this girl have this, 1 minute conversation on this. But as you can see from the community note that's been added, I love community notes. These are just regular aircraft on approach to DC. There's nothing nefarious going on here at all. So like S2 said at the beginning, you can explain at least 80% of these sightings on that sort of stuff. So let's have a listen here to what Mayorkas has to say And let me know if you all think that this guy's believable. By the way, here's George Stephanopoulos, who was just successfully sued by Donald Trump for talking shit about him to the tune of $15 million on behalf of ABC.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us this morning. Can you clear up the confusion here?
Absolutely, George, and thank you very much for having me. There's no question that people are seeing drones, and I want to assure the American public that we in the federal government have deployed additional resources, personnel, technology to assist the New Jersey State Police in addressing the drone sightings. Some of those drone sightings are in fact drones. Some are manned aircraft that are commonly mistaken for drones, and we do see duplicative reporting. But there's no question that drones are being sighted. Let me set the record straight here, George. There are thousands of drones flown every day in the United States. Recreational drones, commercial drones. That is the reality. And in September of 2023, the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, changed the rules so that drones could fly at night. And that may be one of the reasons why now people are seeing more drones than they did before, especially from dawn to dusk. And so that is the reality. But I want to assure the American public that we are on it. We are working in close coordination with state and local authorities. And it is critical, as we all have said for a number of years, that we need from Congress additional authorities to address the drone situation. Our authorities currently are limited and they are set to expire. We need them extended and expanded.
What exactly do you need?
We want state and local authorities to also have the ability to counter drone activity under federal supervision. That is one important element that we have requested.
All right.
And we've heard it echoed.
I'm going to stop it there. And John, I'll go to you first. Thoughts on Mayorkas' statements there?
It's just more of the same kind of government gobbledygook, not answering any questions, always hedging their bets that people are not going to care. But the more and more of this stuff that gets out, the more and more people care. My wife, who is not a real political person necessarily, her goals are raising 3 kids and, making it through her job on a daily basis. So she's not as plugged in as I am and relies on me. And she's asking me, she's like, what's all this drone stuff? And I had to explain to her a lot of the stuff because, if you're getting your news off of Facebook, you're going to hear and see all of this crap and you're going to think, oh, well, that's normal. No, this is not normal. This is not normal. Yes, thousands of drones are flown every day. I fly my own drones on a regular basis, getting film. Problem is that's not what's going on here. This is not normal. And because it's not normal, they're trying to cover it up as normal. That's typically what a government does when they're involved in something and they don't want the cat to get out of the bag too early.
Yeah, there's no good reason to not explain these things, as we mentioned. Yep. And that, again, plays into, the infographic that we put together. So if we keep coming back to this, the government extreme secrecy, the government no interdiction, restricted airspace, no one terrorists, federal government saying that there's no threat, wide open border, or weapons of mass destruction intel that's in our country, ineptitude, trying to prevent hysteria, false flag, or WMDs are the only way to really square all of those things. Otherwise, let's just say, for argument's sake, let's just entertain the thought that it was an alien invasion. Would alien invasions be running internal combustion engines in their aircraft that came from, another galaxy? Seems rather unlikely, in my opinion. Sal, I saw you shaking your head there when Mayorkas was speaking.
So, the thing that makes it nefarious is just the fact that they keep saying they don't know what's going on. So if indeed it was nothing out of the ordinary and people are just seeing drones and noticing them for the first time since there's hysteria, well, why don't they come out and say, well, we looked into this incident and it was an Amazon drone, and we looked into that incident and it was some kid, with an expensive drone flying around. And so there's none of that. That's what makes it very suspicious. As far as the hysteria, I think that is inevitable. Probably 80 or 90% of things are, manned aircraft, because people are just looking up because they want to see what's going on. I remind everybody who missed the 80s, the satanic panic, right, which kicked off, and, because a lunatic out of Canada, the whole thing was debunked after the fact. He wrote a book. He was a psychologist. He wrote a book called Michelle Remembers. And, there's just mass hysteria after that, to the point of which there were daycare owners being put in prison and years later exonerated, who were accused of, occult activity, doing things to the kids, et cetera, et cetera. So it became known as the satanic panic. It was a moral panic of the time, just like you saw in the Salem witch trials. So 80% of this may be exactly that. So not to any way defend Mayorkas in any way, but where he said, there are drones flying at night now, blah, 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 that can account for a lot of it. But the fact that they won't just come out and say, hey, look, we've looked at it. This particular incident was Amazon drones, and this one was whatever, and this one was some farmer doing whatever, right? So if they're not investigating it, which just does not wash, how come in past incidents, and there's been several, where somebody flew a drone into protected airspace, within half an hour, the FBI is at that individual's door? And there's none of that now. So that is what makes the whole thing extremely sketchy.
Yeah, again, we have all these different things happening. How do you square them all?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you think that you have an answer and you go to square it against everything, it completely ignores several other things. So good on your part. So S2, I'm going to bring up a couple articles here. One's a post, pardon me, and one's an article. So Health Ranger's pretty good. His information is typically pretty good. And he would agree with you and Sal as far as the trying to ban drones. So it's looking pretty clear now that the U.S. government is using its secret military drones to terrorize the American people in an effort to persuade Congress to pass Orwellian new drone restrictions that would prohibit citizens from being able to fly drones at will. Apparently, all the drone flights over North Carolina and other disasters can no longer be tolerated because they contradict official narratives, aka lies. Government narrative shapers need basically a kind of drone patriot act to heavily surveil and restrict drone flying by Americans. So they terrorize everybody and claim it's not them. Classic behavior of a government that considers you to be the enemy. You will be blinded while they will control all of the skies above you. And then there's another article here, New Jersey drone invasion, just in time for Congress to reauthorize Orwellian law. And again, there's that graphic that we keep seeing coming up over and over and over again. So S2, I'll give you a first crack at this because you were the one who brought it up in the first place. Is there, in your mind, is there any chance that there's more than one thing going on here? That they're trying to ban drones and maybe there's something else going on in concert? Or are you just fixated on they're trying to ban drones?
No, I think what this is a massive psyop, honestly. They've, if I had to really guess based on what I know about what's going on with DARPA right now, DARPA's just requested a $4.36 billion budget, which is up over their 4.12 budget from 2024. And if I wanted to make an educated guess based on what I know and what I've seen and what I've read, I think somebody was testing something, and they were doing it out in the public because they thought nobody would notice. And now somebody saw it and they got caught. So now what they have to do is they have to create this mass hysteria using confirmation bias, where people are constantly looking up at the skies and they're seeing all of the lights up there. And you can look up and you can see satellites, and you'll call that a drone because guess what? Satellites move. The question is, while they've got you looking up, what's going on down on the ground? So that's really what I think is going on here. Is this is a massive psyop. There's something going on down here that is a cover up, and they've created this mass hysteria to confuse everybody so that you don't know what you're looking at, and you're not paying attention to what's going on down here.
Entertain me here for a second, and I agree with this comment, but I want to hear your thoughts. Somebody last week made a comment that a lot of the drones that people are seeing in the skies are private people with their own drones that are looking to get the scoop on the drones, like they're flying drones to try and see what they can see. And that's actually a fairly large number of these sightings. Does that make sense to you?
I completely believe that. I was out flying mine yesterday. I completely believe it.
Touche. There you go. All right. So I've got another video to play here. So this gentleman says that he knows what's going on. Military drone expert. I figured out what the drone situation is. I was in the Army, active duty. I worked on drones. I was a maintenance NCO for some surveillance drones. And before that, I worked on the Apache, the Kiowa. He says there are two types of aircraft people are seeing, and he explains both.
I'm making this video because I have figured out what the drone situation is. I was in the Army, active duty. I worked on drones. I was a maintenance NCO for some surveillance drones. And before that, I worked on the Apache, the Kiowa. I know aviation. So what people are not noticing is that you have two separate types of drones and two separate types of things in the air right now. First off, the drones that you see with flight lights or anti-collision lights or the things that the FAA requires, those are drones that are probably operated by the United States government. Now, the orbs that you've been seeing on the internet, that is the reason why all those drones are up there. And that is also why the government isn't telling you what's going on. And that's because the drones that you see that look like regular aircraft, those drones are up there to get some information on the actual orbs, which are actually the UFOs. I'm making this video because...
All right.
Oh, crap.
John, you're Air Force veteran, 12 years. What do you make of that?
I'm always really skeptical when somebody says, I'm an expert, a self-proclaimed expert. I don't know. There's so many people out there trying to get their 15 minutes of fame over this, trying to say, hey, I know this, I know that. I take everything with a grain of salt, and that's really, it took me several days to really get to where I actually think there's something, and it can be nefarious as a psyop, or it can be nefarious as an actual event that they're trying to figure out. Both can actually have nefarious backgrounds. So when I say nefarious, that's really not even singling in on any one of these things, because the reality is we don't know 100%.
Yeah.
But everybody's got their opinion, and everybody wants to get on their phone and record and drop a video to try and get 4,000 more followers on X because, and the reality is, hey, why would you not gamble? There's a 50-50 chance that you might be right. And then you are an expert. So
I like Sal's opening comments on how there could be more than one thing at play. That wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. Yeah. So, I mean,
well,
it could be.
There could be the taking advantage of something that's at play, right? Like what we saw in 9/11. Right. What came out of 9/11? You got the Patriot Act, right? So that's why a lot of people go as far as saying, it was an inside job. The CIA orchestrated the whole thing. To a lesser extent, I think more people buy onto maybe they knew it was coming and were not so diligent in stopping it because they knew there were things they would be able to pass that otherwise they couldn't. So we might be looking at the same kind of situation. Perhaps there is a legit reason that things are happening. It's being covered up, but I am certain that they will use it as an opportunity to pass legislation that in some way hamstrings the American people in the use of drones.
So, Sal, let's get back to home base here, okay? So we know the federal government is being extremely secret of this, and that these are government drones. They're large government drones for the numbers that we're seeing out there. Therefore, they're not interdicting them because they don't want to shoot down their own drones. They're flying these things over restricted airspace, which would be high value targets. We have a ton of known terrorists in the country, and this was before even this administration was installed, although it's grown exponentially since then. We have one official after another, John Kirby, Karen Jean-Pierre, Mayorkas saying there's no threat. These drones don't pose any threat. We've had this wide open border for the past 4 years, and we have solid intel for many years with regards to dirty bombs and potentially nuclear fission warheads coming into the country. So as you were talking earlier, so I'm looking at this, I'm thinking to myself, well, number one, we have a fairly inept administration right now. That's kind of a given. Are they trying to prevent hysteria? They could absolutely be doing that because the system is fragile and they may not want that completely exposed. Could this be a false flag and, try and prevent the transfer of power? Possibly, but I don't think that their balls are that big that they would actually pull that off at this juncture. And then we're back to the WMDs again. And then we've got you and S2 saying, well, we've got legislation as well pending to potentially ban drones and to control the narrative by banning drones. I can see almost everything on this red box here being true. I don't know that they're all mutually exclusive, essentially, is what I'm saying.
I would agree. And with this administration, we're at the point where we have the least trust in government we probably ever have as a nation. So there are so many things at play. We're exceedingly vulnerable at this point due to open borders and the amount of bad actors we know are in the country. So, and with the inauguration of the enemy of the deep state coming up in a month. Right. So if anything is going to kick off, it is likely to be sometime soon.
So I'm going to play this video and then Sal, you first, S2 second. But it's funny because as you were saying that, I'm kind of chuckling to myself because of the very first sentence. Our government has lied to us so much. And let's be clear, this is nothing new. This has been going on for decades. I would argue that this has been going on since Woodrow Wilson is my feeling on this. But let's have a listen to this Fox News report.
We look just here in the Northeast and look at some of the places specifically that these have been spotted. We're talking about Picatinny Arsenal Military Base, a very sensitive place. Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster. We look over here, we see Naval Weapons Station, Earl Joint Base, McGuire, Dix, Lakehurst. And what we worry here is when we have Kirby come out and Mayorkas, they've never lied to us about anything, but when they come out and say, we don't know what these are, well, that discredits the safest and best theory right now, which is that this is U.S. testing what our capabilities are, what our defense mechanisms are. So those two things go against each other, and that leaves us all wondering either that the government doesn't know or they're not telling us the truth. Why don't we look just here in the Northeast and look at some of the places specifically that these have been spotted?
All right, so that went into replay mode. So Sal, I mean, he put a pretty fine point on it there. Exactly what we've been saying is that you can come up with a theory, but then other things are happening that it just doesn't square against. You try to square all of these things at the same time. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we've beat this topic to death and it's time to move on. But if you've got any comments on him, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll pass it off to S2.
I always come back to, I go on the presumption that the federal government is seeking to strip constitutional rights away from the populace in every move they make, especially under Democrat regimes. And if we're placing blame, a lot of bad stuff happened under Bush Jr. as well. So let's call it like it is. So absolutely dishonesty, and maybe there is something legitimately happening that they're covering up, but they will take full advantage of it. Just like you said before, John, the famous, it's Rahm Emanuel, right? His famous comment,
Yep.
Never let a good crisis go to waste. So that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, well said, Sal. And like I said, I think we probably beat this to death, but S2, do you want to weigh in on anything or should we move on?
2 points of discernment here. Anytime you see a TikTok video, a YouTube video, a video on X, and the first word they flash in big letters at the top of the screen is truth, it's probably bullshit. Second point of discernment is anytime you see a post on any social media that says, I have information from high-level sources without telling you who the high-level sources are, it's bullshit. I don't trust the next news nation. They're another left-leaning rag out there too. So I don't believe anything they said. I had another point that I was going to make on this is that, how do I put this? There was a news lead that was buried earlier this week or last week about a Chinese national that was arrested after running a drone over a military installation. It was not the one that we saw, the well-known one.
Yeah.
So this is what I look at with regard to this. If you were somebody that was in this country and you were spying or you were looking to do reconnaissance on hard targets, and how would you do that right now? You have all of these people that are up in the air trying to get shots of these drones. You have all of these people with their hysteria saying that manned aircraft are drones. What would you do in all of that? You're basically the gorilla running in the water at this point. You could go out and put up your own drone and claim innocence that, oh, I was just trying to find the drones out there.
Right.
And you could fly into restricted airspace and you could probably get away with that excuse. But no, they arrested this Chinese national. And I would dare to guess that there's probably more incidents that have happened like this that have not been publicized. So do I think there's something going on? Yes. As I said, they've got you looking up in the sky. What's going on down here on the ground?
Yeah, so I would add to that we know just in the first quarter of this year alone that there were 30,000 Chinese nationalists who came across the border. So these are people who check in, say they're claiming asylum. The system may never lay eyes on them again or may never touch them again because most of the time these people don't show up at their hearings. But you don't just get up and leave China. The CCP controls everybody who leaves and everybody who, comes in. And we've had pretty solid open source intel, and it's all out there. And that it's not hard to find that there are spec ops trained Chinese soldiers en masse in the lower 48, and that they physically located themselves close to high value targets. We have 55,000 substations in the country, for example, for our power grid. And out of those 55,000, we have 9 of them that could take out power to 95% of the country. You've got East Grid, West Grid, Texas Grid. There's 3 choke points for each one of those 3 grids. And we know for a fact that land around those substations has been purchased by the Chinese that used to be farms. And we know it's happened close to military bases. So there are a lot of bad actors at play here. There's a lot of people who hate our guts because of the shady things that the CIA and other agencies have done to foreign governments over the years. I mean, we found out, about this, S2, we found out in 2020 that the CIA hired Dennis Montgomery to write a piece of software many years ago to be used to steal elections in foreign countries called Hammer and Scorecard. And we know that was used in 2020 here. So we've been stealing elections around the world and screwing up other countries around the world for such a long period of time. We've amassed quite a list of people who have a score to settle with us. And we're back. John and I discussed this last night. The enemy of my enemy is a friend of mine. And we're seeing that. And we can go back to the 1990s. I mentioned this last night, but for people tonight who weren't with us last night, Hezbollah and the Sinaloa cartel started working together in the 1990s. They've been working together so long now, and this is not hard to verify, that the Hezbollah terrorists, they look and sound identical to their Sinaloan counterparts. And they're working hand in hand with the Sinaloa cartel on taking the fentanyl precursors that come from China. And there's 2 ways to make fentanyl. One's very rudimentary, one's very sophisticated. We are not getting fentanyl in America from sophisticated Chinese labs. We're getting very rudimentary analogs of fentanyl. There's 1,400 analogs. We have signatures on 200 of them. And many of them are much more potent than other analogs. Carfentanil, remifentanil, used in 2003 by the Russian Federal Police, the FSB, to end the Chechen hostage situation at the Moscow theater. They didn't tell any of the first responders that they were fixing to pump remifentanil and carfentanil into the HVAC system. They killed hundreds of people, not just the terrorists, and they didn't tell anybody, so they couldn't be treated and revived with Narcan, for example. But again, my point is that we have a coalescing of enemies that have figured out that if they cooperate and work together, their chances of hurting us are much greater. And that's where I see this really coming to a head sometime in the very near future. And again, 2 years ago, Mike Sterling and I said drone attacks on America, aerosolized fentanyl, aerosolized anthrax, open air venues is a really big deal. And all the keyboard warriors said that Mike and I were doomsday preppers. And slowly, all of that stuff that we've put out there has aged pretty well. And I'm pretty proud of the stuff that we brought to the table, not because we knew it was going on, but because we knew the right people to bring to the table to attest to all of this sort of stuff. I want to make one more quick comment before we move on to the next thing. Is S2, a great comment on your part that when somebody says, you know, I've got this top secret information, or I got somebody in the inside told me this, that, or the other thing, I couldn't agree more that 99% of the time it's BS, right? That's the very specific reason that we spend so much time putting the briefs together for Survival Dispatch News. 7 days a week, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We publish briefs every single day. Some of the briefs take upwards of 15 plus man hours. The average one are 6 to 8 man hours go into them. Myself and other people in the background and in the foreground working on those things. And the reason we do that is so that as we're discussing all of this stuff, if you want to go research it on your own, we provide our sources. Here's the links. You know, go ahead and do all the reading you want, watch all the videos you want, because normally we won't play an 8-minute video like we did tonight. We just play the highlights. So anyway, with that being said, we'll move on to the next article here. So Jim Ferguson. So he's from Great Britain. Panic in the White House. Over 3,000 sightings in one night. Mysterious UF drones are appearing en masse, brazenly flying over nuclear sites and sensitive military bases with complete impunity. Their boldness suggests something far more sinister is at play. Why hasn't the strongest military on earth shot them down? What are they afraid of? Their reluctance hints that they may know more than they're telling us. Is this a show of force from a foreign adversary or something not of this world? What on earth has the ability to intimidate the strongest military on earth? The question is really who controls the skies. And I get it why people are saying stuff like this, but at the end of the day, if you want to answer that question, Occam's razor, the most obvious thing's usually the answer. That's because they're our drones. These are our assets owned by our military. This is a 4-minute video. I'm not going to play the whole video, but we'll play enough of it to get the gist.
Federal lawmakers have growing concerns about the mysterious aircraft popping up along the East Coast. Today, the military confirmed some of the unidentified craft have been flying over a naval weapons station in New Jersey. Fox 13's political editor, Craig Patrick, is now tracking this investigation and the fallout in Washington. Craig?
Yeah, it's really baffling at this point. The Biden administration says these are not U.S. military aircraft or drones, and that there's no evidence, they say, that this is a threat to national security. But see, members of Congress are saying there's also no evidence that they are not such a threat. And the sightings are piling up, first and mainly along the middle Atlantic coast, yes, but also all the way to Southern California.
We saw 2 that came directly overhead our backyard in South Temecula here, and then we've seen a bunch across the horizon.
I looked up because it was coming now right over top of me, and it was quiet. It didn't make any noise.
As we speak, the FBI says that it's trying to figure out what these things are, so we don't know exactly what we're dealing with. The sighting started in New Jersey and then New York, spread again across the middle Atlantic states along the coast, then the Pacific coast. And if they are drones, then they are certainly flying at times and in places they should not.
This is a violation of FAA regulations, which that's why I believe it's either our government or a foreign nexus that's operating these drones. And if it's not, then we really need the FAA and Department of Homeland Security to step up here, because there's a clear violation.
But not necessarily, according to the Biden administration, because the White House said that they appear to be small manned or crewed aircraft, not unmanned drones that would not have to adhere to the same set of FAA rules. There's also...
So I'm going to stop that video there because I want to go to this next video as a prime example of what we've been discussing here for at least the past week, actually. So a new video, people started calling the cops on these lights, UFO, UAP drones in New Jersey. Cops driving by like, what do I do? Why are they descending into the ocean? Well, community notes for the win once again. This video is not related to the recent unmanned aerial vehicles UAVs reported in New Jersey. The video shows drones part of the Blizzard holiday party at Knott's Berry Farm, a holiday light show at a family restaurant park. So I'll just play part of it just so people can see
Someone
what
called
it
the
looks like.
cops on these lights. See, even the police, they're going crazy. Aliens are attacking.
The aliens are attacking. All right. So again, I wanted to use that as an example of, you know, something that people are getting all worked up over, kind of War of the Worlds level material, when in reality it's nothing. This is from Grant Stitchfield. Emergency alert drones have reached Palm Beach near Mar-a-Lago. I believe nefarious factions of the deep state are to blame. They're trying to sow fear and chaos before President Trump's inauguration. So before I play this, I want to have a quick conversation here. So when Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers, good friend of ours, was given the intel of the 9 man pads brought across the border a couple months ago. So these are shoulder mounted heat seeking surface to air munitions, 1.5 pound payload. They're intended to take out jet engines essentially at low altitude when planes are taking off or landing. If you hit a 757 with 4 jet engines and you hit one, it's not going to take it down. You would have to hit more than one with these things. But nonetheless, when they came across the border pretty quickly, Donald Trump started flying in a different plane. He wasn't using Trump Force One. They were using decoys, all sort of stuff like that. Going back a couple years ago to when we started this whole drone thing, we have been saying for an extended period of time that it's not just aerosolized fentanyl. It's not just aerosolized anthrax. It's not just 1 or 2 drones. Keep in mind that the open source software from Hollywood called Drone Swarm has been used by terrorist organizations where one operator can control up to 5,000 drones for a light show or nefarious purposes. Iranian Revolutionary Guard 2019 used that software and drones to fly into Saudi Arabia, smoke their biggest oil production facility, and they knocked out 5% of the global oil supply in the blink of an eye using that software. So why do I mention it before we show this video? I'm mentioning it because anybody who's been to Mar-a-Lago, whether you've been there or driven by it, is very close proximity to the road. It would take nothing for a handful of drones to crash into that building with no forewarning whatsoever, that were loaded up with explosives and that could cause an absolute mass casualty event. It would take nothing for somebody to pull up beside Mar-a-Lago, just like Timothy McVeigh did. It's that close. And look at the destruction that was done to the Alfred P. Murrah building in Oklahoma all those years ago. So, you know, this drone threat is a whole lot more than just 1 or 2 rogue operators with drones. This is the potential where, imagine if you had 10 guys, that's it, 10 guys across the country who each had something like 1,000 drones at their disposal, keeping in mind that that's only 20% of what that software is capable of doing. And they attacked 5 locations simultaneously with 1,000 drones. It's not that big of a stretch of the imagination. You would cripple America. Nobody would go to work. Nobody would send their kids to school. The economy would crash. It would be absolute bedlam. Now imagine that happening for several days in a row. So let's bring up Grant Stitchfield's video here with regards to Mar-a-Lago and see what he's got to say.
Well, looks like the drones have reached us. West Palm.
Folks, emergency podcast. The drones, UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, UFOs, whatever you want to call them, have now reached Palm Beach. That's right. They're over Palm Beach. Who lives in Palm Beach? Of course, President Trump. We're also seeing footage. This sent to me by a Stinchfield's Army member, a viewer of the Real America's Voice show. They're in Pompano Beach. What is going on here? I believe the forces responsible for this are from within inside the United States government. Nefarious forces inside the United States government that is trying to sow some form of chaos, maybe trying to scare us all, create problems for President Trump before he takes office. That's what this is about. not a foreign enemy, and it's certainly not aliens. This is coming from deep state actors inside the federal government. Mark my words on this.
All right. So I don't have any evidence specific to that video, but I do know West Palm Beach, and what was shown there was directly pointed towards the airport in West Palm Beach. And if I was a betting man, I would say that it was regular aircrafts. S2's already alluded to that. So I don't know that there's much debate on that. So I'm going to bring up a video.
Chris, can I make a comment real quick?
Yep.
To pull that video back up again, if you don't mind.
I'm already past. It's closed.
Okay. So everybody needs to understand, if these were drones that were doing some kind of nefarious activity out there, why would they use running lights? That's just stupid. It's a stupid thought process there. Why would they want to do that if they were actually going to be doing any kind of attack or nefarious action or whatever? You don't need lights to run a drone, but you do need it to abide by FAA rules. That's all I have to say.
Well, and we made that point in the opening infographic in general, easily detected drones, bright lights, and audible engines. And that's a great question that you pose. So anyway, let's move on and listen to what Chris Christie has. I'm not a big fan of Chris Christie, I'll be honest. And I think we got one or two funny memes on him coming up in a little bit. But I'm going to play a little bit of this video because occasionally he says something that's kind of lucid.
Back
Thank you, George.
to this week. You're a New Jersey resident. Have you seen any drones?
Yeah. 2 mornings ago over my house at 6:15 in the morning. Saw them myself, so did my wife. And so, yeah, they're there. And I've been traveling around New Jersey as I normally do all week. And I can't tell you the number of people who have come up to me concerned about it. And that's
But is this a mass hysteria of some sort?
Well, here's why, George. Because of answers like the secretary just gave. They're not answering the questions.
Well, he said they're monitoring it. They haven't seen any unusual activity, and they need more authority.
Let me tell you something. I agree that they need more authority, but to say this is not unusual activity, it's just wrong. I lived in New Jersey my whole life. This is the first time that I've noticed drones over my house, and I was in a restaurant in Monmouth County on Friday night. Had people at the bar coming up to me and saying, "Governor Murphy won't tell me anything. The president won't tell me anything. Do you know?" Like, well, I don't know, but I will tell you this. I think this is what happens in our society now, George, because we're used to having things so rapidly. If you don't fill that vacuum, then all the conspiracy theories get filled in there. So you've got people like Congressman Jeff Van Drew saying there's an Iranian mothership off the coast of New Jersey.
True.
Absolutely not true.
And I agree with Christie on that one in particular. That was a pretty crazy interview that Jeff Van Drew did on Friday. And he kept saying, "I'm going to tell you the deal. This is the deal. I'm going to tell you the deal."
And provably now not true. And he's had to back off that. You can't have conspiracy theorists filling the space, but the Biden administration and state authorities have to be more vocal and let people know exactly what they're doing. This interview this morning was a bit of a better step, but I think much too little too late. And when people see this kind of activity, it's a newish technology to most people, and they're worried about it and concerned. And to the extent they're following things around the world, they hear about drones being deployed in Ukraine all the time as weapons, and us deploying drones as weapons at times. So you can see why people are concerned, and it's a lack of communication from the government at the federal and state level that's at fault here.
So you don't think it's this kind of thing where once people become focused on it, they naturally see things that they wouldn't necessarily pay attention to in the past?
I think that there's some of that, but I can tell you from the activity, I mean, look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist and I'm not looking for things I don't need. That 6:15 yesterday morning, 2 mornings ago, that was a drone over my house. And I'd never seen anything like that before. And I've been living at that house for 30 years.
So if you were governor right now, what kind of authority would you want to have?
I'd want our state police to be able to have the authority to bring those drones down and find out why they're doing what they're doing. And of course, we'd have to coordinate with the FAA, but we do that kind of coordination both when I was U.S. attorney, as a law enforcement officer, and as governor all the time to be able to have shared authority. But the states do not have enough authority now to do what they need to do. And what we're going to find, George, is you're going to have individuals acting as drone vigilantes, and they're going to start taking them down. That's not
And I think those are legitimate comments on his part. And of course, we're right back to where we were in the beginning with the very first infographic that we brought up. Why are they unwilling to shoot down the drones? Well, the only way to truly square that, other than just outright incompetence, is the fact that there are drones, which is why they're not taking them down. However, shortly after he appeared on that news broadcast, we found out the secret to actually what was going on, at least in New Jersey, with all the drones. And he was right. They were over his home, bringing him his
Gotta get my nuggies.
Bringing his pink slime nuggets. Absolutely. So anyway, we had Stitchfield there discussing Mar-a-Lago. So Donald Trump has a solution to this, by the way. So, by the way, that just playing that music will get this video nuked by YouTube. So we're at the end of chapter 1. I've got a short message to play from our sponsor, CCW Safe. It's only 30 seconds long. But before we do that, I do want to mention this. So James from Pilgrim Ammunition sent this to me last night. This is a fairly long document. It's 42 pages long. We've uploaded it to our Patreon. We've also sent it to our Signal chat where our regulars are. And this is the Alien False Flag, Historical Perspectives and Theoretical Implications for Government Control. It actually speaks to a lot of the stuff that Sal and S2 opened with, as far as, using events like we're going through right now as a false flag to essentially be a power grab, for lack of another term. So if you go to patreon.com/survival dispatch, tonight's brief and last night's brief are members only. It's $9.99 a month, but normally we publish the briefs for free to everybody. And here comes a quick word from CCW Safe. We'll be right back.
If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets. Unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
All right, so we're going to jump right into Chapter 2. Chapter 2, we usually cover a bunch of different news headlines in the order of 10, 11, or 12 of them, and then we wrap up with Chapter 3 with some memes and some funny stuff, because it's best to end these what could be very cynical news stories on a good note. So first and foremost, and kind of interesting that Christy would mention this, but there's a report out from this weekend. Ukrainian drones strike Chechnyan capital Grozny 500 miles beyond the front lines. We're talking deep into Russian territory. And the reason I brought this up is, one, because Chris Christie's point is valid. People keep hearing drones used in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. And then on top of that, we have this discrepancy in drones. So S2, I'm going to you first because drones are your thing. Describe the difference between the drones that are like a quadcopter versus these drones that can go 500 miles behind enemy lines.
Those drones that can go behind enemy lines 500 miles are probably conventional gas powered. For starters, you have they're called fixed wing. So what fixed wing has an advantage of is, one, they can be powered by gas, they can be powered by electric, they can also be hybrid. The other advantage they have is they can fly longer distances because they have the ability to take advantage of wind of the wind updrafts that allow them to actually glide. So you could continue on your course just by using very little power that the drone would expend to continue on its course while using the updrafts and just gliding. So that's basically it. With a quadcopter, you're looking at a battery In most cases, I'd say with this, from the things that I've seen going on in Ukraine, it's not just quadcopters. They're using hexacopters and octocopters as well. And those will take much larger batteries, and they'll fly larger payloads also. I mean, these things will carry a full IBC tote full of liquid. And if you've ever seen an IBC tote and knows how much that weighs, then you'll understand what I'm talking about. But they have a very finite distance that they can fly, and they're not looking to return home with these. They're not somebody's play toy that they covet very much. They're on a one-way trip, and they're going to basically kamikaze their payload, and they're going to go down with the ship. So I do know that there are drones out there on the commercial market that can fly quite a distance, but to say they could fly 500 miles is beyond saying that's a stretch.
Yeah, no kidding. So, John, to you next, because you were in the Air Force for 12 years, and these are the types of birds that y'all had. What kind of range did the Predators have? I mean, 500 miles isn't very far for this type of drone, correct?
MQ-9, give me a second. It's pretty far. I think it's several thousand miles. The big thing is like they have a loitering time or a hovering time. They're not really hovering, but they have a on-site time that they can actually do. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to look this up because it's pretty vast. I wasn't actually a drone mechanic. I did have friends that were in the drone program, but it's not 500 miles. It's much further than that.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Sal, do you have any comments on our Predators? I mean, these are drones that fly typically 10,000 feet up. And as you saw from that one, they may carry munitions. If they don't have munitions, they're just considered ISR drones, intelligence, surveillance, recon.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have any general comments? Well,
I mean, I have no expertise at all in drones, but, they were a real game changer for the past decade plus. If you look how they've been used in anti-terrorism, the Predator drone showing up and obliterating an individual or a group of individuals. So, the big ones have been obviously a part of warfare for a long time now. I think it's really with Ukraine, we see all these small ones being used. And again, kind of civilian populations don't have Predator drones, but they have these small commercially available ones which have been weaponized, which again brings me back around to the reason legislation is being pushed is because the deep state doesn't like a civilian population that can fight back. And we can see how effective even small drones have been now in what has happened in Ukraine.
Yeah. All right, so I have some info. Just their raw range. There's some differing information here, but well, not differing. There's just a lot of information here. It's 1,150 miles that they can go. So that's about the distance of a World War II bomber, like a B-17, B-29. Okay. I think had a little bit further range than that, but they can air refuel, which has become I worked on air refuelers when I was in the Air Force. That's when I was actually, after I got out of active duty. And those guys, with air refuelers, that basically makes their range unlimited. Now, here's the other thing. Depending on the altitude, they can actually have a 30 to 36 hour endurance with a 3,000 pound payload at 52,000 feet. That's
52,000 feet.
52,000 feet.
Wow.
They can hover up in really high altitude. That is a variant payload. But for 3,000 pounds, they can run, and that's with a turboprop. They can loiter for 36 hours at 52,000 feet.
How expensive is one of those? Just curious. Do you have any idea?
It actually should be on this page. This is a spec sheet. 32 million.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's not available on the civilian market.
No.
Wow.
And we mentioned this movie last night, Land of Bad. That's an MQ-9. Predator drone.
Yeah, pretty decent movie, I thought.
It is a pretty decent movie. It shows you at least a behind the scenes curtain of what these drones can actually do on a battlefield, and it's pretty gnarly. It's pretty freaking gnarly.
It is absolutely. Sal, do you want to describe this movie?
Well, it was, kind of a typical special forces detachment gets in over their head fighting terrorists. But Russell Crowe was fantastic in the movie.
Yep.
He plays the drone operator, and he's great in everything he plays, And this one, I was really surprised how good his role made the movie. He was just a guy sitting behind the screen running the drone through the whole thing. But it was entertaining and better than most.
And being able to carry, multiple Hellfires and Paveway missiles, those are just plus an assortment of rockets and all that kind of stuff. The Hellfires are insane ordnance, smart weapons that can. I mean, the accuracy with which you can get out of a Hellfire is insane. So they can do a lot of damage. One drone can do a ton of damage. That's why I don't know that you're ever going to be able to replace fighters necessarily. Some you will, but for bombing and surveillance, drones are the wave of the future. There's no reason to put pilots up in bombers or surveillance aircraft. Fighters, there's a little bit of the human factor that still plays a role in that, but as far as the other two types of sorties that you're going to run, that drones are absolutely the way of the future.
Yeah, Admiral Robert Harward and I were having an offline discussion earlier this year on drones. And keep in mind, his father, who was also an admiral in the Navy, was the head of Project Gyrodyne, which was in the late 1950s. We had basically drone helicopters that had a 42-mile range that carried torpedoes, because we had the Soviet threat at the time, approximately 300 submarines in the USSR's force, and they were tracking that sort of stuff. I just want to make one quick comment back to you, John. His comment to me, John, was that if and when we ever go to war with China, like kinetic war with China, not a single plane will fly over China with a pilot in it, that it will all be drone warfare. But go ahead and add
which makes sense. And I just like... I'd like to add this too, is Democrats love drones. They love drones. Obama loved drone strikes. He absolutely loved drone strikes.
Well, my theory is drones are similar to leftists. They're like a hive, and they all work together and programmed, right? And it's not an autonomous vehicle; it's controlled from the mothership. So that's my theory why leftists love drones so much.
and you never have to face your enemy face to face.
That's true too. I will say this. Having been, I had a friend that was a captain in the drone program, the female, and she would tell me that PTSD is actually very high in drone operators. The reason is because they see things on the battlefield that ground forces don't see. They see the people that they've blown up. In the fog of war and ground warfare, a lot of times in kinetic warfare, you're seeing everything kind of through the lens of like what's going on in your area. Whereas a drone operator sees the whole battlefield. They see all of the effects of what happens when they drop a bomb. And let's face it, you do kill innocent people with these things because of the way that terrorism is. Terrorists, as we have seen with Hamas over the last year and a half, they hide behind innocent people because they're scumbags and they want the news headlines of you killed innocent people. And so, and so drone operators actually see a lot of warfare in HD that we don't see.
Yeah, that's well said. Absolutely well said. I can't remember what the name was here. It was a gentleman in New Jersey suggesting that we look up John Mike Keene's drone video. So we'll look that up. We'll probably play that in tomorrow night's episode. Appreciate the heads up on that.
That drone that he's talking about, Chris, is the drone that I was speaking of in the DARPA ancillary program made by Teradyne.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So we'll probably bring that video up tomorrow night. So I want to mention this. Bill Brown was a Navy SEAL combat veteran, three deployments to the Sandbox. He's now an attorney. He founded the New York City SEAL Swim across the Hudson River, which has drawn a lot of attention, a lot of donations for veterans who have PTSD, et cetera, et cetera. We have him coming on 2 nights from now, so Tuesday night, 7 p.m., to discuss Pete Hegseth. So Pete Hegseth and Bill Brown are very close friends. Pete Hegseth stepped up to the plate and helped Bill build the New York SEAL Swim. And I want to say that Pete was responsible for raising $2 million to help this group, which is pretty outstanding. So the email that I have up on screen here is Bill's YouTube channel was nuked yesterday, and he got this is an email that he sent to them today. And here's all he was told was that content that promotes spam, scams, or other deceptive practices isn't allowed on YouTube. All of his videos revolve completely around veterans and helping veterans, nothing more, nothing less. He appealed it. Here's the response that he got to his appeal. Basically right here says it all. We won't be putting your channel back up on YouTube. So this is an ongoing problem that most people are aware of with YouTube as far as suppression of anything they don't agree with. I think you're going to see some legal sparks fly over the next 4 years because of some of the shady things that they've done, which explains why Mark Zuckerberg has been in Mar-a-Lago kissing up to Donald Trump, et cetera, et cetera. But that's a side point. The point I really want to make is tune in Tuesday night to hear basically one step away, one of Pete Hegseth's best friends, what kind of man Pete Hegseth really is. So we've got all kinds of crap in the news cycle, and it's just that it's crap. It's a character assassination stuff. I talked to Bill last week at length about Pete Hegseth, and he said he's an amazing human being who's done some amazing things and will do amazing things for our Department of Defense. And it would behoove all of our regular followers to join us on Tuesday night for that. So up next, I've got a video from Tom Fitton at Judicial Watch, and I'll let him use his own words. It's a short video.
In early 2021, Attorney General Garland and Milley met for lunch at the Department of Justice. They discussed then former President Donald Trump, and Chairman Milley pressed the Attorney General to investigate domestic threats and far-right militia groups. Woodward described this meeting as highly unusual, if unprecedented. It's criminal, in my view, to have one of the most powerful military leaders in the country have a personal meeting with the Attorney General to encourage him to jail citizens of the United States and investigate them. All part of this attack on Donald Trump. And this, by the way, is the same man partly responsible because he ran the Pentagon for not having troops in place, the military in place, to protect the Capitol on January 6th.
All right, so let's recap what we know about Mark Milley. He went to school with Richard Levine, who's the mentally ill transgender person who's the head of Health and Human Services. Boy, are we ever getting an upgrade there. Milley's also the general who took control of the military away from Donald Trump after January the 6th without saying anything. That's treason. There's no other way to square that. And then he had the nerve to call his Chinese counterpart and tell his Chinese counterpart, don't worry, no matter what Donald Trump orders, we will not be attacking you. So don't worry about any, bluster that he may put out there. So the rumor is that he's asked Joe Biden for a pardon, and innocent people don't need pardons. And this guy is dirty. Somebody refresh my memory, but he claimed that he was a spec op soldier. I'm sure he went through selection, but when it got time to actually deploy, he sat back in a tent many miles away from where all of the action was. And he's never seen active duty stuff, but his whole chest is full of all of these medals because rah, 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 General Milley. Who wants to go first?
Sounds like a real Tim Walz type character.
worse, Tim Walz with power.
Yeah.
I was thinking that all those medals he had on his chest were Boy Scout badges.
You know, that may even be a stretch too far. Sal, you love the political angle of things. I know where this is going, but just run with it.
The left celebrates mediocrity and losers in general. They really do, right? Everything is built around elevating the mediocre and suppressing those who are actually very capable. So it's no surprise at all. You know, they disdain people of personal strength, personal ability. That's why I'm convinced that leftists truly hate Donald Trump. Is his very personality, a guy who stands up after, you know, getting his ear shot off, yelling "fight, fight." Could you imagine what would happen if, you know, that would have happened to anyone on their side? There'd be no such display of, you know, just
Bravado.
Bravado, confidence of the individual, and they hate individualism. People forget that leftists are collectivists, and I'm not saying this about everyone who votes Democrat, right? Most people are just uninformed. We're talking about far leftists, right? They hate individualism, so they love guys like Tim Walz, like this guy who, you know, all a fabricated background of supposed heroic, being a hero of some kind, and there's no accomplishment or personal achievement or personal strength there at all. So no surprise at all to me.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on, we've had Patrick Byrne on before, really interesting guy. So Patrick was the CEO of Overstock.com. He was a Senate Intelligence Committee asset. He is the person who was in the middle of the whole Turkey bribing Hillary Clinton with $20 million. And then John Brennan and Obama gave him another 18 million for a second bribe to make sure they had lots of dirt on Hillary. And then they went to Hillary and they said, you know, you're going to be the president for the next 8 years. We're going to put a Bunsen burner under your ass. If you're a good girl, we'll keep the flame low. If you're a bad girl, we're going to raise the flame up. Of course, they didn't anticipate the tsunami of Trump votes in 2016, and she didn't get in, but you can look it up. Operation Snow Globe was the name of it. We have Patrick Byrne coming back soon. I don't know that it'll be this week, but hopefully the following week. Very, very interesting guy. This is a picture right here. So the General Flynn, and right here is Patrick Byrne. This was the meeting that was held in the White House. This is the back of Donald Trump's head at the time, discussing the 2020 election and what their options were as far as what they could do. And Patrick Byrne had inside information, and he's just a super, super interesting guy. I can tell you that my personal friend, Todd Callender, was implicated by a guy who was ripping off the Senate Intelligence Committee. He was pretending to be not only this one person, but he was also pretending to be Todd Callender. And Patrick Byrne reached out to Todd requesting a meeting at his, home in the Barbados. So Todd flies all the way down there. Patrick Byrne gets off his private jet wearing his pajamas and a house coat, and they sit down and start talking. Patrick kept saying, Todd, could you move over here a little bit? Actually, move over there. Could you speak a little bit louder? And it was clear that they were being videotaped and recorded. Well, it didn't take long for the FBI and Patrick Byrne to figure out that Todd Callender was not part of this nefarious deal where this guy was ripping off the Senate Intel Committee for millions of dollars. But Todd will probably be joining us on our conversation with Patrick Byrne to recall that with all the details. Pretty interesting, very high level espionage related stuff. Moving on to the next one here. So this is some stats. I don't know that I really believe them, to be quite honest with you, but it shows what the breakdown is between Democrats and Republicans. Personally, all of our regular followers know where I stand on this. Republicans, Democrats, two different sides of the same coin. I've been saying that since the 1990s, long before anybody coined the term Uniparty. It's all bullshit. What we basically have is we have political theater on the part of Democrats and Republicans, and we have people who are, patriots, MAGA, whatever you want to call it, on the other side. But basically, before Elon bought X, the I don't know if the numbers are further down, but I've seen them where it was 75% left wing and 25%, right wing. And now it's got to be quite a bit more balanced. And that was his goal. And that's all fine and dandy. But here's the thing that stands out on here that I do not believe. YouTube, 45% left wing, 50% right wing. Absolutely not a freaking chance. And I know the plural of anecdote is not data, but we get more snotty, entitled left-wing liberal comments on YouTube than anywhere that we get anywhere else. There's always going to be some bad apples out there, but it is very predominant on YouTube. And I don't believe these numbers that it's split evenly like that. Would anybody like to comment on this particular thing? I'll take that as a no. We'll move along. So there's a story here that just came out of a school denied white student reading help to prioritize minorities, legal firm says. So this is all part of the, equality of everything, right? And my problem, Sal, with the left, and then I'll go to you first, then S2, and then oh golly, John, if he has anything he wants to put in on it, is they constantly confuse equality of opportunity with equality of outcome, and they try to force it so everybody has the same outcome, and somehow they think that everything's stacked against everybody but the white man, and it's actually the exact opposite way. This is pretty brutal. So you have a mother who owns property, pays taxes here in Wisconsin, pays property taxes to that county, has a son who's dyslexic, and was denied any reading assistance and help for over a year because the school board flat out said, we're not going to help this youngin because he's a white male. Sal?
All right, this is a Bolshevik communist tactic that we've been dealing with for years now. And I'll put this out there. It's reverse racism that we've seen now for the past few decades, right, against whites. But it all comes from white yuppies in urban areas. I just want to make that clear, before anybody gets hostile towards your friends who are minorities. It doesn't come from them. You might have some real loudmouths, the Al Sharptons of the world and that kind of thing. But this all comes from an entitled white upper class group of people who push this. And I don't even believe that it's the white guilt thing. That's part of it. It is simply the leftism that controls the institutions that they graduate from, that has brainwashed them with the idea that we are an inherently racist country. Our institutions have institutionalized racism, all of these complete lies. And it is all just part of the narrative. So absolutely, if we see at this point any kind of thing to do with enrollment, services provided, etc., minorities are absolutely prioritized. And that is the communist leftist idea. It is equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity. And we all know how that ends. That ends with everybody being equally suppressed. Yes, we'll all be equal. We'll be equally impoverished with no rights, right? So, but for leftists, they don't care as long as we're all equal. So for a leftist, you have to realize this, that they hate people like the billionaires, which, I mean, granted, I'm an absolute capitalist and I find it mind-boggling how any single individual can be worth $90 billion. It's mind-boggling, right? But I'll take that system any day, because I don't care if I make $100,000 a year and that guy makes $100 million a year. We're both living better than if he makes $10,000 a year and I make $5,000 a year. And that's what happens in socialist run countries, and how they can't see this is beyond me. So the racial component just plays into that entire mindset that they have.
Yeah, well, I would argue that this is all part of the irregular asymmetric warfare that's been waged against us for decades, especially China, but other adversaries, to divide and conquer the United States. I mean, we have 2 years maybe 4, but probably 2 years to affect some positive long-term change that can't be wiped out with a stroke of a pen. And, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole in this episode, but things like if somebody counsels a youngin to believe that they are a different gender, that person needs to go to jail. And if that person then is a doctor and surgically removes parts from these youngins, they need to go to jail, prison for the rest of their life. We've got to stop this insanity, which is all that it is. So I just noticed the time. I've got 4 tabs open for chapter 2. I'm going to go through them all at once and then give everybody one thing you can comment on it after that. And then we'll be into chapter 3, home stretch, where we get into the funny ha-ha stuff. But first piece of news here, and I'm not wishing ill upon anybody, even Nancy Pelosi. What I'll say is this: she's 84 years old. She's been in Congress since 1987. She has filed an intention to run for election again in 2026, which would make her 86 years old. She fell in Luxembourg and broke her hip and had a hip replacement. She's still overseas. Regardless of, I could go on for a long time with regards to Nancy Pelosi, but we've got to have term limits. We can't have geriatrics that are, embedded shills, for lack of a better term, running our country. It's bring back term limits. If the government has, or the president has term limits, then Congress needs them as well. Here's the story I alluded to earlier. ABC News: Stephanopoulos settled defamation suit with Trump, pay $15 million and apologize. And so in the same vein, I'm not going to play this because we're running short on time, but Vindman is telling MSNBC in this recent interview that Elon Musk is giving state secrets to Vladimir Putin. And that's how come Trump has the support from Putin. Pardon me. Golly.
Putin.
Yeah, geez. The reason I brought this one up right after the George Stephanopoulos one is this asshole and all the other assholes like him out there who've done nothing but lie and spread disinformation and misinformation. They deserve to go through the same process that ABC and George Stephanopoulos went through. And hopefully Brendan Carr is coming in as the new FCC chairman, will be true to his word and is not going to treat broadcast licenses as sacred cows anymore. And some of these, all we have is propaganda. The mainstream media is all propaganda. But anyway, again, I'm going to save us from going down that rabbit hole too deep, but here you go. Van Jones. Guys, can we cut it out? Donald Trump is not an idiot. Donald Trump is smarter than me, you, and all the critics. This dude is phenomenal. He is the most powerful human on earth. Again, we're short on time, so I'm not going to play it, but keep in mind he was part of Obama's, upper echelon, Obama's team. And the reason he's making these comments is because Trump's team recognized that the mainstream media would never give him a fair shake, and not to expend a bunch of bandwidth on the mainstream media and go talk to Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson and other podcasters. And he completely made the mainstream media irrelevant. We've been seeing this slow, process of mainstream media circling the drain, and they can't die soon enough. I'll end on this comment, then to you first, John. Early 1980s, we had over 600 independent news organizations in this country. We now have 95% of media is owned by 5 conglomerates, including shady companies like BlackRock and Vanguard. It's just paid propaganda. It's nothing more. And it's why when we do Survival Dispatch News, we cover the entire spectrum from the far left to the far right. We gather the information, we present it, we present what our sources tell us in addition to that. And not that it's an SDN particular thing, but podcasters like us who have no skin in the game, we have nothing to gain by lying to our audience or the public in general. We're the only ones left telling the truth because the mainstream media sure as hell isn't doing it. All right. So John first, Sal, and then Esty.
Well, I'm gonna first address a comment that just flew by, how we didn't actually talk about when Mitch McConnell did this stuff. Well, I would refer you to last night's episode. We freaking talked about it for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Stop with this bull crap that we're only showing the far right. I have been anti-Mitch McConnell for 20 years. I have been anti-establishment Republican. You want to know how we got Trump? It's because of because of the establishment Republicans and how far crazy the right or the left has gone too. So don't act like we're up here mouthpieces for, Mitch McConnell. That's not true at all.
There is not a single person who's ever been on Survival Dispatch News who would give the sweat off of their bag to Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, Mitt Romney, or any of those scumbags.
Yep,
they are just as bad as Pelosi, Obama, and the rest of them. We're anti-establishment. We are not, anti-American like most of those guys are. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're
going
good.
off right now. Thank God I got it on mute because it's warning me that I have a irregular high heartbeat.
So the other thing, Van Jones was high level with Obama when he first was in office. I don't trust the guy. Sometimes he makes some good points. I'm not going to deny that. He's actually had some of all of the drones over there, different kind of drone, but all the drones over there on, I think he's on MSNBC, right? Or is it CNN?
CNN.
Yeah.
He's not stupid, put it that way.
Huh?
He's not stupid, put it that way.
Exactly. Yeah. He's not stupid. He can read, he can at least read signals where the rest of the left seems to be stuck in this bubble and doesn't understand what's going on. I think the Stephanopoulos thing is the tip of the iceberg. If I was him, the other guy that you had up there, Vindman, I would sue him into the next century.
Absolutely.
Sue that guy, because you know what? They're going to realize, you know what this was over, right? What he reported on was a phone call to Ukraine about what was proven about Hunter Biden 2 years later.
Exactly.
He was impeached because he was looking for information about the corruption going on in a Ukraine energy company. Yeah. And it was all proven true.
True
So
story.
do you impeach people because they're looking for the truth and they uncover the truth? Gosh. And all of those people that were involved in that absolute and total farce should be sued and they should be jailed because it's wrong. And I would say the same thing if Republicans were doing it to Democrats.
Amen.
Because it's the truth.
Yep. 100%. Sal, then S2.
Yeah, so Van Jones is a far leftist, but he says fairly reasonable things once in a while. For example, he was even interviewed on a Dennis Prager movie several years ago where he was condemning the campus movement where they're silencing speech that they don't agree with, so he can be reasonable on some things. Here's what bothers me about his angle, though, and this is the angle that many in the mainstream media have taken. They are basically saying we were played for fools because now Trump utilized and leveraged this new form of media to do what? To deceive. What they're readily admitting, all it comes down to is propaganda. Hey, we lost our megaphone. Somebody else was able to grab the microphone. So that's what the admission is. He's saying, hey, we need to now take control of these alternate forms of media because that's where the future is at. Never once has he said we lost because Kamala Harris is a communist. Never once did he say we lost because we're on the brink of World War III because of this administration. We have 10 to 20 million illegals in this country with hundreds of thousands of narco terrorists and real terrorists and everything else. Never once has he talked about the fact that we're paying 30 to 40% more for everything and the average American family is suffering. So those are the reasons. Yes, Trump was brilliant in utilizing the alternate forms of media, but it just sickens me how these people go straight to that. He's basically saying, we lost this election because we were not able to dupe the average American idiot because they now have alternate forms of media. The same way that in 2016, I was listening to NPR, National Propaganda Radio. The only reason I listen to them occasionally is because I like to hear what the enemy is talking about. So this nitwit on NPR, the day after Trump won the election, is literally saying, I just can't believe that after everything we did and everything that we've said for the past 2 years, he still won. Like they think they are entitled to just control the mind of the populace. And Van Jones is the same way.
True. Yeah. Well said. All right, S2, you've been on the sidelines here for a little bit. We're calling you in first team on the field. Let her rip.
To be honest with you, I don't really have anything more to say about it.
Hold on a second. Let me make a note of this. December 15th, 2020.
Except to say that January 20th can't get here soon enough.
Amen to that. Amen to that. All right. So that's the end of chapter 2. Normally we would play a message from one of our sponsors. I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm going to quickly say that there's been a handful of products that all of us, not necessarily all of us on this panel, but at least a few of us on this panel and other panels, we've promoted some various products in recent months. And I wanted to close the loop and stitch these things together. So I'm 55. Mike Sterling's 55. Most of our guys are, well past 40 years old. And I'm not telling y'all anything you don't know. Energy is a big thing, right? How fast you can recover from, expending energy, how much energy you have, all those sort of things. Well, that's the kind of the underlying theme to everything that I'm willing as the CEO of Survival Dispatch to put on our channels. So when I mention things like Black Forest NMN, yeah, they say it's an anti-aging, compound, and the FDA is trying to push supplement manufacturers out so the big pharma can make all kinds of money. I'm not a scientist. I can't speak that. I can tell you that when I take 2 NMN in the morning versus not, my energy level is noticeably different. So we just so happen to like the ones from Black Forest, but you can get them from any of the supplement manufacturers. We've got some new products from LifeWave. I'm wearing one right now, this X39 patch. So they sent me all these different patches that are frequency patches. Everything's frequency based. We'll get into it on another night. But I haven't slept this well in forever since I started using these patches. So that increases my energy. And the common theme here is what increases energy, right? So I do a lot of high intensity exercise. That's not long duration, right? You can exercise 20 minutes, 15 minutes, balls to the wall. That's better than going to the gym and plodding around for 2 hours. So you don't have to dedicate your entire life to working out and going to the gym. I eat limited carbs. And I'll essentially end on this, that this product, these branched chain amino acids from Native Hydrate have been a game changer for me. S2's got them. John's got them. Mike Sterling's got them. Most branched chain amino acids taste like crap. These don't. These taste really good. And there's all kinds of other stuff with this, but I'm not a scientist. I'll tell you this. Drinking this as opposed to drinking a lot of caffeine and having a crash, my energy level goes way up with this. And if you drink sweet tea, Gatorade, sodas with a lot of sugar, and I'm telling you right now, if you drop those sugar waters and you drink this, within 24 hours, you're going to notice that your energy level is exponentially better. So just keep that in mind, that when I recommend something like these supplements, it's because I'm looking for ways to increase my energy level. And, that's all I'll share on that for now. So let's get into chapter 3, some of the funner stuff. Sal, this one is totally for you. I know it was a big brief today. You probably didn't have a chance to go through it all, but listen to this. I'm going to play the whole video, by the way. Are you triggered? Be careful out there. Still a lot of unhinged beta boys lurking.
So we're able to be raised to help. Are you triggered? It's okay to be triggered. He's your president. Does it make you feel special to flip me off? It's okay. It's okay. It makes you special to flip me off because I like President Trump. It's okay. We all love.
It makes me feel good to flip you off because I get to let go some of my anger about at people who have manipulated and lied to you to make you feel like you have voted for someone who is going to do something for you, when all he is going to do is continue to lie to you. He's going to continue to steal from you, and he is going to continue to make people dumber, less safe, and less healthy. So I feel sad for you. I feel bad for you that you were manipulated by Fox News and people like Tucker Carlson and these Sean Hannity and these fuckholes. So that's why I feel bad for you. So good luck, take care, and fuck you.
It's okay. Love you.
Aww.
Oh my God. You know what? I got to tell you, honestly, I love chapter 3 of SDM because we always get to laugh and put smiles on our faces and other people's as well. Does anybody want to chime in? If
Oh,
not,
I have to. I have to.
Let her rip.
Right. Yeah. So this is the tolerant left, the ones who shoot people that they don't agree with. Most of them don't have the guts to do that, fortunately, but they're all generally emotionally driven and unhinged. So when you hear a rant like that, you're looking at somebody who's fact-free. I guarantee this guy thinks there's more than two genders, right? And all that other leftist stuff. He's fact-free. He's talking about he's going to steal from you. Should we review what the economy was like under Trump as compared to Biden? Okay. He's going to keep lying to you. Has there been anything that came out of a Democrat's mouth in the past 4 years that has been factual? So they live in their own self-imposed fantasy land. And I've always tried to understand why, because, I'm friends with a lot of far left, and we're not even talking about the average Democrat. The average Democrat voter doesn't pull up and flip somebody off because they have a Trump sign, right? We're talking about leftists here. And I have friends that are leftists, and to me, it's like when I analyze them, it's like analyzing an octopus at the aquarium. Like I can't relate to this creature at all. There's no point in trying to. So this is just another display of that.
You've got a beta soy boy here saying that you cried worse than that on 1621 crybabies. You know what? There's a shit ton of evidence that Obama stole the election for Biden. Where'd the 15 million votes go? Answer me that question. Look at all the votes that everybody's got in the past 20 years as president. Where'd the 15 million votes go that magically appeared for Biden in the middle of the night and all went 100% for him? No down ballot votes, none of that shit. The evidence is overwhelming. So whatever. We had every right in the world to be upset. But here's the good news. So by installing this garbage administration that we currently have right now, it has taught Trump 2.0 some important lessons. And this term will not be decided by executive orders that can be wiped out by a pen. So good luck there, Sonny. Moving on to the next one, just because I love sticking at those assholes. Low IQ, low information voters. Check this out. What made them think this was a good idea? Back to the funny haha stuff. I'm going to let it play twice. Let it rip. Oh my God. It's kind of brutal though that she got hurt. So here's another one with an escalator that's pretty funny.
A freaking big poodle.
Let's play that one more. Yeah, what are they called? Giant poodles or something like that?
Actually, that's a standard poodle.
Standard poodle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of the other small poodles are actually smaller bred versions of an actual standard poodle. I know that because I used to work on a place that had standard poodles when I was a little kid.
That's too funny. This is actually a pretty humorous video here. You get a kick. Everybody except for the soy boy is going to get a kick out of this.
Come on, show the one where he falls off his bike.
10, 12, 15. Oops.
There it is.
He touched down not even 4 hours ago. Was a quick trip, but as you said, very impactful.
Quick trip.
Oh my God. It's too freaking funny.
Very impactful when he fell down.
So Sal, you're gonna love this one, Sal. I queued this one up just for you. A recent study shows that people who identify as alphabet people have a lower IQ than average. 92 is the average.
Oh, unimaginable. So speaking of low IQ, the clip you played before of the guy flipping off the other guy who had a Trump sticker. Did you notice how he said you're going to live in a world less safe again under him?
Yeah.
Again, the total break from reality. Like, do they not see where we're at this point? So, I don't know if it's an IQ thing. this may be legit, but the left in general, they're emotionally driven rather than thinking pragmatically. That's the only way I can put it, because there's many who are very intelligent, just like there's plenty of right-wing dumbasses, right? But there's just two different approaches to reality in the world. So I don't know if this is how legit this is or not. I, as far as I'm concerned, when you want to mutilate yourself, there's some kind of mental illness involved, and there's plenty of brilliant people with a mental illness. I think the blame lays at the feet of the portion of society that has made this a much bigger deal than it actually is.
So we have one of our people message to the alphabet community. He's going to identify as a pancake from the planet peanut butter. Oh my God. So anyway, moving on to the next one here. Yeah, this is from John, by the way. I don't care what level plate you.
That looks like Jeff.
I have a flamethrower just outside here on the patio. Y'all have seen me actually burn some stuff up with it, but that's pretty funny. Let me see here. This is funny, not funny. So the girl asking for help. Sorry, I'm white and I don't want to go to prison. Boy, howdy. That's a mouthful there. And
the heads were exploding at the Navy Army game yesterday when Mr. Penny was with Donald Trump, JD Vance, Sean Ryan was there. All these guys, they were absolutely losing their minds that a man who did nothing but help probably save lives and protect people got off and acquitted.
The other guy was mentally ill, had a rap sheet of 42 convictions for assaulting people. He was saying he was going to kill people and didn't care if he went to jail. There were other black people who helped Daniel Penny and thanked Daniel Penny.
Yep.
F around, find out.
It's really just like, the guy that RDL 68, whatever, who's been in the comments, just ridiculous, talking about Pete Hegseth. Well, here's the thing with Pete Hegseth. People from the left and the right have come forward to defend him. There's more unity about the defense of Pete Hegseth by people that know him and have worked with him for years, whether it be at Fox News or in the military. If he was an alcoholic, if he was a serial rapist, guess what? There wouldn't be this many people from both sides of the aisle sticking up for the guy.
Exactly. And we're going to hear directly from Bill Brown on Tuesday, all the reasons why he's endorsing Pete to be the head of the DOD, and they serve together. So anyways, moving on from there, the next one here, world leaders and their dogs. They probably should have put somebody from Haiti in here as well, but I guess they didn't rank. All right. Trans women are
men. Thank you, Santa.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Just spreading, oh boy, I don't know who sent me this one, but
that would be Mike Sterling.
This one is Mike Sterling. I don't know. This one's bad.
Hey, big Mike.
Oh, I mean, I can't even make any comments.
I had to put out the unsee button on that one. Sorry.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. All right. And here's the head motherfucker in charge here with his ice cream cone and the drones. All right. And this is actually better though. Season's greeting from the Bidens. And Sal, this one is totally for you. This is who we're up against.
The Rainbow Jihad.
Have you guys watched the reaction videos?
I have.
Yeah. So
the election.
Post-election, where all of these, what kills me is every woman who says that she's going on a sex strike. It's like, yeah, you're not having sex now, woman. I don't know what you think you're doing. And if they do, I think it's great, because now conservative women will by far outbreed leftist women, which is already the case. And in a couple of generations, maybe all this blue-haired and rainbow freaky stuff will be bred out of the environment. Who knows? Not
a bad thing. So speaking of these left wing women, This is kind of sad. You know, AOC just discovered that ICE has detention centers outside of every 7-Eleven.
I sent that out all over the place the other day.
On a serious note, be prepared for this crap, though. This is going to happen as soon as Homan gets released on the world.
Absolutely. All right. So here we go, by the way. Barack Obama, 69 million votes, first term, 65 million, second term. Hillary Clinton, 65 million. Joe Biden, 81 million. Kamala Harris, 68 million. Yeah, but 2020 was a legit, you know, there was you know, no thievery going on. I mean, it's how do you square this? There's only one way to square this. And it was hammer and scorecard being used against us instead of for us to fabricate all of these votes. Didn't exist. So moving on from there, it appears like the Japanese have a solution to this, you know, breeding plan, as you all mentioned. They're going to a 4-day work week so people can make love over long weekends and boost the birth rate because they're actually declining rapidly. And you've heard of the bullshit meter. There's the bullshift meter. And let's see here. The good news is we're going to reverse every single crisis, calamity, and disaster that Joe Biden has created. Amen to that. We just got to get to January 20th for crying out loud. And there you go. Just for you, John. Merry Christmas, Alvin Bragg, Daniel Penny, and Trump at the Army-Navy game.
In the words of Clark Griswold, Merry Christmas, kiss his ass, kiss your ass. Happy Hanukkah.
All right. And so you all know that Joe Biden is quite a bit older than Jill Biden, and she was his babysitter, and he left his wife for the babysitter. This was a conversation recently captured at the opening of the new Notre Dame. So you need a babysitter? The memes that have come from this one in particular are just too freaking funny, man.
I think Melania could take her.
I bet you she could as well. No question in my mind. All right. So we're at that stage of the broadcast where we have some homework for our audience. And actually, we really just have the same points as last night because we've been on the same topic here. So up your prep game and make sure you, your family, and your fur babies have gas masks. It's hard for fur babies, by the way. And Mario DePodesta and Kevin Ramsey and a bunch of other people were discussing it in our Signal chat today. Probably the best thing to do is Mira makes basically the boy in the bubble, but for dogs, to keep them, you know, for CBRN, to keep them unharmed if and when we have any type of, you know, chemical attack, biological attack, anything like that. Next one, stay on top of developments on SDN and X. Be skeptical. Do not believe anything you read or hear until it's been backed up. Does anybody else want to add any homework for our audience? I'll take that as a no. And so quick reminder, patreon.com/survival dispatch, sign up for a free account. You get about 50% of the content. Pay $9.99 a month. You get all of the content, and you also get an invite to our private Signal chat, which, as we mentioned every night, is just unbelievable. The volume of conversations and intel that's shared there. Other than that, please please mash the like button. Holy crap. You can tell we're running long tonight. And we're up to you now, S2, for the conflicted question of the night.
Okay, here we go. A senior Air Force officer famously asked in 1990, what if the U.S. projected a holographic image of Allah floating over Baghdad, urging the Iraqi people and army to rise up against Saddam? That was 26 years ago. In 2015, thousands of people witnessed and recorded a massive floating city above the city of Foshan in China. Some say this was a warm-up test of Project Bluebeam, a NASA plot to implement a new age religion with an antichrist at its head and start a one-world government via technologically simulated second coming of Christ. Do you believe governments are capable of such deceptions?
So I'll go first just because we've discussed this recently. And even I had to look it up again because I was starting to get a couple different things mixed up. So there's Project Bluebeam and there's Project Blue Book. So Project Blue Book is a Canadian guy 20 years ago came out with this, you know, crazy conspiracy theory that the world was going to be led to believe that Muhammad and Jesus Christ had been brought back, and all sorts of calamities would be associated with that, and that we would have to have one world government, blah, 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 blah. Project Bluebeam, on the other hand, is really about broadcasting holographs into the sky to make people believe that something's happened, not like Jesus Christ or Muhammad coming back, but more so along the lines of military might, those sort of things, and that it's a hopeless situation. We have to give up, War of the Worlds type level of stuff. And Project Bluebeam is absolutely a thing. We've confirmed that with multiple people in the military, and it typically works best on cloudy nights where they can essentially broadcast the hologram off of the clouds. I'll say that right after 10/7 happened in Gaza last year, there was a volley of incoming rockets and missiles towards Israel, and they were bragging up the Iron Dome, how it was taking down all these various things. And some people analyzed the video, and there were portions that were manufactured. And there's all kinds of technical ways you can discover that by pixelation when you have certain tools that'll zoom into a really close level and whatnot. Part of that was trumped up, and meaning that the Israeli government probably has access to Project Bluebeam, or we helped them to make it look like the Iron Dome was even more significant than it was. So I absolutely believe that Project Bluebeam is out there and is capable of these types of deceptions. John, you next, then Sal, and then we'll let S2 wrap it up and we'll call it a night.
Well, the technology exists, and it can be used for people, who want to do nefarious things. So yeah, the government is, I never underestimate the capability of a government to do bad things to its people. That's why we don't live in a democracy. That's why we don't live in a monarchy. We live in a republic that is for the people. The people rule this country, something that we need to be constantly reminded of. We are the government in this country.
Constitution starts with three very important
Exactly.
words. We, the people. The Constitution doesn't grant any of us rights and privileges. It's us telling the government what the guidelines are that they have to operate in, because we are in charge, not the government. They work
absolutely. And so, yeah, but is it capable of doing these things, and would it do it? Abso-freaking-lutely. 2020 happened, and it was a real thing.
100%. Sal.
Yeah, I mean, if the technology's there, I could certainly see it being used for the Israel example. I could see them using it to kind of boost, the numbers of how many projectiles came in and were shot down, et cetera, because it fits their agenda, obviously. But, as far as fabricating a religious second coming of Christ to get the entire Christian and Muslim world to think the Messiah has returned, I think that might be a stretch, but certainly using it in military capacity, I think that's a lot more realistic.
Important distinction there, Sal. That was what the Canadian guy said from Project Blue Book.
Oh, okay.
So what
I missed that. So Bluebeam is entirely using it for military operations.
Project Bluebeam, yes, is all about our government having the technology to broadcast into the sky to make it look like something is way bigger than what it actually is. Way more significant.
Find it much more viable than the other.
Yeah, exactly. All right, S2, let her rep.
Yes, Project Bluebeam does 100% exist. It is out there. Lasers. They also have voice to skull technology. That's also another patent that the Army holds. I had an entire document that I posted out on the Insiders chat about that last week, where I had gone in and done in-depth research on that. And there was some goofball group out there that was head of this, that was part of a government agency. They called themselves the First Earth group. And they were a bunch of insane people out there that were creating this stuff. So yes, it does 100% exist. They just haven't used it.
Right on. Okay. Appreciate that. Sal, when we exit here, the software is going to kick us backstage while we play a really good video, by the way, and then it'll bring us all back in. So you don't have to leave. We'll do an AAR afterwards. And other than that, for everybody out there, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and God bless America.